Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Farina, and I'm one of the speech and language therapists working in the Ealing Speech and Language Therapy Service.
Hello, and I'm Nina Brown, and I also work for Ealing in the Ealing SEND and Inclusion team. So I'm an Ealing SEND Inclusion worker.
So this workshop is titled Supporting Autistic Children and Children with Social Communication Differences. So the plan for today is to help you know how to support your child's communication and to also learn about what local services and workshops are available to support your child's sleeping, eating, sensory differences, toileting, and communication. This is a universal workshop, so whilst we can share useful strategies, parents, you can identify the strategies that are most useful for you and for your child, because not every strategy will be useful, but hopefully all of you will walk away with a few ideas from today's webinar. So the first thing to remind parents and carers is that you are probably already doing lots to help your children. And lots of things that we will talk about today, you might already be doing at home. But the most important thing about today is to talk about why these things are so useful, and so that you can feel like you can keep doing them and help you to feel reassured that you're already doing lots of things and they are the right things to be doing. So there is so much more to communication than talking. Talking is not the only goal. We want to help autistic children to feel understood, feel connection, support their sensory needs, help them to communicate in whatever ways work for them. So the tips we are giving today is to support communication as a whole, not just about talking. And this is not about teaching the child to not be autistic. This is known as masking, and it can be really damaging to autistic people and it can impact their mental well-being. We need to really allow autistic people to be their authentic selves. So we will be trying to promote that during this webinar. So the first tip we're going to be talking about is child-led shared attention. And this is all about sharing the moment with the child. This is where you are focused on something that the child is really enjoying, and you bring yourself into that activity to enjoy it together. And your interaction is then based on that shared context and that shared enjoyment. So mirroring and copying is a starting point that you could use, and parallel play is often a trait of autism. Shared attention is about tuning into the child, following their lead, so really thinking about what they enjoy and connecting with them. It's through this that we can understand the child better and foster a connected environment for them to develop their communication with us. So one type of way we can do this is an approach called intensive interaction. So what is that? Intensive interaction helps two people feel connected and share those moments together. Children love it when we copy them, as it shows that we are tuned into them and we are interested in them. So how to do this? It's really simple. You just get down to the child's level so that they can see you, you're face to face with them. And then enter their world by copying exactly what they're doing, whether that's movements, gestures, expressions, sounds, whatever it is, you in that moment copy them and play with them in the same way that they're playing. So for example, some children might not yet like to share toys and they might be playing with two cars. So you might then sit opposite them and have your own cars to play with and mirror that playing. Nina, over to you.
Thank you. So you are your child's best toy. So non-verbal means games that aren't about talking. They're about how you use your bodies to communicate. So things like ready, steady, go games, games where you're jumping together, you may be tickling each other, chasing, singing and dancing, playing peekaboo, blowing balloons and letting them go, blow, 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 ready, steady, go. People games are really fantastic. I think one of the common people games that I've used with children is where I've given the child a choice of 2 games. So I've done round and round the garden like a teddy bear, 1 step, 2 step, tickly under there. And then I've done row the boat. And when I've done this repetitively a few times, I've then asked the child round and round the garden or row, row. And then your child may get to the stage where they're able to make that choice. So people games, that building that connection with each other is really important. So building attention. So when we're building attention, again, you can use ready, steady, go. And what you want to think about are the things that your child may particularly like. So it may be things that when they're going to the park and they like to go on the swing, or they like to spin on the roundabout. It could be that you say ready, steady, go, and you push them on the swing and they come back and you hold them. And then again, you would say ready, steady, and then hold back and don't say go and wait to see. After all the repetition of this ready, steady, go, pushing on the swing, they would eventually say go. Again, with cars or tickling with a feather, it would be that you do the action and then you stop and you wait to see whether they give you eye contact, or they make a sound, or they squeal with excitement, you know, and then you know that it's like, go, and then you would do the action again. So it's building that attention, it's waiting for them to respond to you and giving them time to process the game and respond back to you. So attention autism is a strategy that was developed by a speech and language therapist, a specialist speech and language therapist called Gina Davis. So it's about creating an irresistible opportunity for a child to learn. So it targets attention, communication and social interaction. So some of you may be already using this strategy, and you probably would be using stage 1, which is the bucket time, where you would have a bucket, and then inside the bucket you would have items that your child would not usually have access to. Now, when you're doing attention autism and you're doing bucket time, the toys that are in your bucket are your toys. They are not for your child to touch. They are not for your child to engage and play with when you are not doing this targeted intervention with your child. So the things you may pull out of your bucket may be things that really interest them. And quite often that would be things that you would turn on and they would spin, or they would light up and flash. And you would simply bring the item out of your bucket on, flashing, spinning, and you're sharing such simple language with your child, and you're using, you know, animation and tone in your voice, and you know, you're bringing your child into the interest of that activity. Then it would be finished, and then you get the next thing out of your bucket. It may be balloon, blow, bigger, bigger, ready, steady, go, and then you let your balloon go. But again, as I say, if you're not doing the bucket time intervention, do not let your child play with the bucket. That's your bucket, your special toys, and they know that when they see the bucket, they will build that anticipation, knowing of what's going to come, something that they would really like. You can see that there's a link at the bottom of this slide. And it will take you to a YouTube channel where it can show you how the attention autism bucket time works, and it's a great YouTube channel to have a look at. And the link that you can see at the bottom can be actually found in the link in the description below. So the key principles, as I said, were to use it daily, creating an irresistible opportunity for your child to learn. Thinking about, does the activity inspire your child's attention? So you want to think about the things that they really, really like. If it's flashing, spinning or musical things, is it worth the effort for the child to watch or communicate? Because if it's something that's boring, they're not going to want to give you that time and that eye contact and that space where you've got this two-way communication. It's sharing good times. and using lots of pictures to help understand and add structure. So use lots of pictures when you're using the bucket for attention autism. So use what you know your child's like. So when you're thinking about play, you're thinking about that joint attention again. So when you want to get into your child's way of playing and their interests, you follow their lead. So for example, if you know your child likes spinning, then you would be their toy. You would be holding their hands and saying, ready, steady, go, and then spinning them round and then stopping and then saying again, more, ready, steady, go, and spinning them around and stopping. If your child likes things like numbers or letters, which is often a favourite, use numbers and letters everywhere. So if it's bath time, use your numbers and letters in the bath, filling up pots and pouring. It's a way of getting into your child's interest. So it could be that, you know your child likes letters and numbers, so you start to play with those, and you may be scattering them and choosing all the pink letters or choosing all the green letters, and your child will see that you are actually showing an interest in the things that they like, and they may want to come and play alongside you and then eventually with you, because you're showing them that you're interested in what they're interested in. If your child likes things like maps or catalogues or going on the bus, it's about thinking about doing those things where, your child gets excited because you may be going on a bus ride, and when you're on that bus ride, it's having that opportunity to be able to use the pointing skill. The red bus, a big red bus. On the bus, and you get on the bus. With the maps, you may be looking at the lines and the colours of the lines to see where the trains go, and talking about the different stations and things like that. So always think about the things that your child likes, and then incorporate that into what you have out for them to access daily, to play with, and then engage with them to play with it too. So when you have a little toolkit like this, you can just remind yourself of the things that you may have picked up through the slides that we've already discussed, and then just add them to your toolkit as a reminder. So what might be a good idea is if you pause your video now and then add one thing to your toolkit.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about using a total communication approach. So, like we said earlier, communication is more than just the words we say. So, communication can be any of these things that you can see on the screen. It can be objects, photos, or pictures, and these are all permanent. They don't disappear like words do. You can use visual timetables or now and next boards to help children with transitions and to show exactly what is expected from their day and what will be happening. You can use Makaton signing and use this alongside talking, so using your hands to make gestures and support your communication by using that. You can use body language, facial expressions, and that's why it's so important to always be face to face with the child, so they can really pick up on all of those facial cues and that body language. And you can also use other senses and touch. And this is particularly helpful with children, for children with complex needs, because they need to experience talking and learning through all of their senses so that they can get as much information as possible through all of those senses. So total communication means using all the different ways of communicating. Okay, so why are visuals so important? So here are on your screen, you can see a few different reasons why visuals can be really important. So visuals prepare students for transitioning. So like, for example, using a now and next board or a visual timetable, it can really help those children to understand what is coming next. And because they can then see what's coming next, that can in turn actually help reduce anxiety. Because if they don't understand what's happening during their day or what is coming next, then naturally that can make them feel a little bit anxious. Visuals allow for language processing. If we just were to use words, it's harder to understand than when we use visuals to get our message across. Like I said, words do disappear, but visuals don't. So that can really help children with their understanding. And visuals really help children to see exactly what you mean. So, when you say a word, that child can't see anything. So using that visual can really help them link that spoken word to the actual object or item that you are referring to. So some visuals are easier to understand than others. And let's have a little think about what visuals your child understands. So on the slide, you can see we've categorized the different type of visuals from easiest to understand to hardest to understand. So starting at objects, these are usually the easiest to understand. You can use a collection of physical objects that represent specific activities or locations, and these could all be stored in one location and be used consistently. So for example, you might have a few little objects in your bag that you take with you and use them throughout your day. You could use, for example, to indicate maybe lunch, you could use like a small plastic spoon. For maybe toilet, you could use a nappy or a piece of toilet paper. For outside play, you might use something like a leaf. Or maybe for art, you might use something like a paintbrush. And how you might use that, you might say, for example, a name like, if your child was called Ben, you might say, Ben, it's time for lunch, and give him the plastic spoon. And when that activity then begins, you re-emphasize and you say, Ben is eating lunch, and then you take that plastic spoon away. That plastic spoon has indicated that it is lunchtime for Ben. Okay, after objects, the next easiest type of visual to use is photos. So these could be photos of the child's everyday places, objects, routine activities, and they can be used to show the child all of these things. It's great if the child themselves are in the photo so that they can associate it with themselves more. And it's great to take photos of the exact activity that you might be doing in the home, or the exact toys that they might be playing with, because that will then be more relevant to the child and hopefully will help them to understand that visual better. Then we move on to color pictures. So color pictures can be used again to show the child's everyday objects, routines, and activities. It requires a little bit more understanding because these are more generic. They're not specific to the child. Similar to color symbols, which again can be used, but they are more generic. And then kind of moving on to the harder visuals to understand, you get to black and white drawings, which again can be used, but they are more generic, as well as written words. So written words actually are the hardest type of visual. They don't have any picture, as you can see, it is just the word. And it can be tempting to use written timetables without pictures, especially for older children who can read. And this can enable timetables to be used more spontaneously and flexibly, but you do need to make sure that the child actually does understand and that they can read what is written. Some children who are autistic are really good at reading words without necessarily understanding the meaning. So it would be really important to just make sure that they do have that understanding. Okay, so now and next boards. Now and next boards are simplified versions of a longer visual timetable. So we have some examples on the screen. And these help to support children to understand their daily routine and to prepare for what will come next. You could move the activity to the finish box or the envelope, or cross it out altogether to show that that activity has ended. So the example we have, you can see on the slide, for example, you've got dinner. So now dinner, next bath. So that is really helping that child to understand that right now I'm having dinner, and then next will be bath time. And then once that dinner has been completed and they've eaten, then you can cross off the dinner part of the board, and then you can move on and write now bath. next, bed. So you're really showing that child exactly what they're doing at that time, but also what will be coming after. And it's important to note that the now and next board is not a tool for compliance, but instead it's a tool to help them structure their routine and help them to understand what is happening. So you probably wouldn't use it to say something like now homework and the next will be your reward like cars. Actually, you're just trying to use it for them to understand their routine. Okay, and here are just some pictures of some visual timetables. So these are slightly longer versions of the now and next board. They're good for children to help them understand what is happening, for example, in a specific time period. So maybe something like their morning routine. And they make the routines quite predictable so that they can expect they learn to expect what is coming, and in turn that will then reduce their anxiety. And it can be tempting to take away a visual timetable when you feel that the child already knows their routine, and that we do see that quite a lot. But this is when they need it most, because they feel comfortable and their anxiety has reduced because you've been using that visual timetable. So please do keep the timetables. This will continue to reduce that anxiety, and hopefully you'll continue to see that progress.
So social stories, these were sort of introduced by a lady called Carol Gray. A social story is a short, simple explanation of a particular event. So that's something that's happening in your child's life or something that is due to happen. And it's about putting a book together, a little story that's relevant to them to help them predict and reduce anxiety and help them understand. It can be used for lots of different situations, going somewhere like new places, the dentist, the hairdressers. It can be helped to develop self-care skills like getting dressed, or big life changes like starting a new school or having a new baby come into the family. Social stories can also be used for, reminding a child of how they can ask for help. They help children understand the situation and know what to expect. So it does reduce anxiety and give them a sense of predictability. They know what they're going to do next and what's going to happen and the changes in their life. So a social story can have lots of language or very little language, depending on what helps your child best. So Carol Gray social stories can be found on the carolgraysocialstories.com website, and using social stories to explain situations on the YouTube channel, which there will be a link to the video in the description. Okay, so here we're just sharing a little basic social story with some very basic pictures. So this little girl's going for a haircut. You would use a picture of your child so it's really relevant and meaningful to them. The journey of getting to the haircut. So you're going on a bus, she's going to be sitting in a chair, she's going to have her hair washed, she's going to have her hair cut, and then you get on a bus and then you go home. So it's very, very basic. And with a social story, when you've made it, or you just could even put the social story pictures on your phone so your child could flick through, you can use this. Your child can have access to this every part of the journey, so it's really relevant and reduces anxiety.
Okay, so just a few slides on Makaton. So what is Makaton? Makaton is an approach where people use signing and symbols alongside speech, so alongside their talking. And this provides a child with those extra visual clues. Why use Makaton? So Makaton really helps children to understand us better. It helps them to focus on us when we're talking. It helps to give them another way to communicate as well. And therefore, it reduces the anxiety and the frustration around communicating. So we've got a few signs here. We've got help, help. We've got finished, finished. And we've got more. So it's really important for adults to speak and sign at the same time, and this will help your child to understand your words better as well. And just a little bit about how you can learn Makaton. You do have the Makaton charity website where there are lots of useful resources for signing. We've got Mr. Tumble, who uses lots of Makaton signing in all his episodes. Got a wonderful YouTube duo called Singing Hands. We will put all the links in the description below. They often record lots of different songs and they sign along, so that's a really nice thing to check out. On our Facebook page, we do have a sign of the week released every Sunday, so you can learn a different sign every week. And then we've got our introduction to Makaton workshops for parents or practitioners, and we've got our Makaton sign time groups as well. For more information, you can email us on the email on the slide, but we will pop it into the description as well. Okay, so just take 1 minute to pause this video now to think about what you can add to your toolkit in terms of using visuals and how that might support your child. Okay, so now we're going to have a little think about how you might get involved with your child's play. So adults often try to get involved in children's play by asking lots of questions, and this can generally be done with the best of intentions, because, you know, as adults we're just so used to asking questions. But we do know that lots of autistic children might not find it easy to answer those questions. Questions do put pressure on the child, and it can make them feel like they're being tested. And it doesn't really give them the words that they need to learn. So try and avoid those questions like, what's this? What's that? What's it called? Where is this? What are you doing? Try to avoid some of those questions that, you know, do come naturally to adults, because those questions can put that child on pressure. And imagine as an adult being constantly asked questions, that would make me feel a little bit nervous. So you can only imagine what that would make an autistic child feel like. So remember, questions test, but comments teach. So it's really important to replace those questions with comments. And how might you do that? So you can get involved by commenting instead. So get down to your child's level and tune into them, just like we've already spoken about. So really watch them and think about what they're really enjoying and how you might join their play. And then instead of asking a question, try and make some comments. So talk about or describe what the child is doing. Say it how they would if they could. So name objects, use action words, so things like running or driving or sleeping. All of those action words are really important for that child as well. And a child is more likely to copy your words than answer your questions, which shows you how important it is to make those comments. And we like to talk about the 5-finger rule. And what that is that you make 4 comments before asking a question. And those comments could be comments about what you're seeing in front of you with that child. So for example, if your child enjoys cars, then you might make 4 comments about that car. So you might say, car driving, beep, beep, car, oh, crash, spin, spin, wheels. And then you've made those 4 comments, and now you can ask the child, what's that? If you want to, because then they've heard so much language before you've asked that question. Okay, so it's really important to try and replace your questions with more comments. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about echolalia. So echolalia is what it's called when children repeat things that they hear. And this is the stage 1 of something called gestural language processing. So if your child does repeat things automatically straight after you've said it, then don't ignore it and don't try and stop it, because that is a form of communication for them. Acknowledge what they're saying by smiling, nodding, and repeating it back to them, even if you don't understand, because that is their way of communicating to you. So it's really important that you respond to them. And do the detective work. Try and figure out what that echolalia might mean. So have a look around you for cues in your environment and see whether you can try and figure out what it is that they might be communicating. And another really good tip for children who present with echolalia is for adults, try and speak from your child's perspective. So instead of saying Ben needs to eat, you might say I need to eat, because then if they are going to repeat that automatically, then they can then repeat that and say, I need to eat back to you. So it's really important that you try and rephrase your comments and actually make them from your child's perspective, because then as soon as they automatically repeat that back to you, then it would make sense and it would be correct. So you can see on this little picture below, the adult is saying, do you want a drink of water? And the child is saying, do you want a drink of water? He's just repeating exactly what the adult is saying. So what the adult has decided to do is say, give water. And then hopefully that child will then repeat, give water. And that would then be a communication opportunity for that child. Okay, and it's really important just to remember that although autistic children may learn language in a different way, like using echolalia, and that might be a little bit different to how neurotypical children learn to use language, it is equally valid. So that is absolutely fine, and we need to be supporting our children with using echolalia. And if you do want to learn a little bit more about echolalia, then we will put a link in the description below to two websites, the Hannon website and also the Meaningful Speech website. So do check out the description below if you want to learn more about echolalia. Okay, so let's talk about books. So all children can learn lots about the world from books. It's really important, however, to choose books at the right level for your child. So find books that are relevant to your child's life and choose books that include their special interests. Choose books that you know that they enjoy and that they like and they like looking at. Books are repetitive and they use lots of language and they have rhyme and rhythm and lots of pictures, which can really help to develop their communication. And whilst you're reading these stories, don't worry about sticking to the text of the book. It's absolutely fine if you don't read every single word of that book. Instead, you could have a look at the pictures together and point out the key words of the book, and that might then help your child to learn those words, those key words. And whilst you're doing that, we can recommend that you use gestures, objects, act out some of the scenarios in the book, and sing throughout the book, just to help that book come to life and to make that opportunity as interesting as possible for that child, which will then help them to stay engaged in that activity with you. Okay, so just take 1 minute to pause the video again and add one thing to your toolkit, thinking about what sorts of things and what sorts of ideas you might try at home to help you play with your child.
So many children with social and communication differences or autism have difficulties with the following. So these may be very, very common with you. So sleeping, eating, sensory sensitivities and toileting. So when we're thinking about sleeping, some children find it really difficult to go to sleep. When they wake up, they find it really hard to go back to sleep. Eating, children could be, parents say fussy eaters. It may be that they're just really restricted to the diet. So they may only eat things that are beige, like rice and chips and pasta and stuff. Sensory sensitivities, that is, everything to do with senses, really to do with, you might have your child walking on tiptoes, holding their ears, screaming if they hear another child crying or upset. That's a sensory sensitivity. And toileting, often there could be difficulties with understanding the routine and the sequence of events needed for toileting. So we do have workshops covering each of these topics, and there will be a link in the description below of how you can access these workshops online with the SEND Inclusion team. And I think that other professionals will be also linking in with us to deliver these workshops. So here's what the workshop flyer would look like. It shares the name of the workshop and the dates. There's several dates throughout the year, and these will be updated again throughout the year, and yeah, it's on different days, but pretty much the same time between 10 and 11:30. So we hope that this is going to be accessible for you to attend.
So we also run a number of workshops jointly between the Early Start SEND Inclusion team and the Early Start Speech and Language Therapy team. So some of these workshops include visually supported communication, promoting positive behaviours, and like these webinars, we also run understanding autism and social communication differences and supporting autistic children and children with social communication differences. We also run an introduction to Makaton signing workshop. So this is a short workshop where practitioners or parents and carers can learn 30 Makaton signs. So it's almost like a taster session. All the details on how to book onto all of these workshops will be listed in the description below. And then we also run some groups in our local children's centres. So one group is called Fun and Learn. This is for children under 5 and their parents and carers, where parents and carers can learn lots of different strategies on how to support your child's social interaction skills and their attention and listening skills. So a lot of those foundation skills for communication. It's a 5-week course and they run in the children's centres. So to book a place, you just need to call your local children's centre. All of the details are on the flyer on the slide to show you where they are running in which children's centres. And then we also run a 5-week group called Makaton Sign Time for parents and children. So this is where parents can learn approximately 100 signs. So this can really help children to develop their communication as well, as we covered in this webinar. The details to book a place are on the leaflet. They do currently run at Handwell Children's Centre on a Wednesday afternoon. And we are also running some groups online. So please do contact us via the details on the flyer if you would like a place. So in terms of reaching out to us via social media, we have a Facebook page and a YouTube channel. So our Facebook page, we often share lots of tips for parents and practitioners, and we also signpost to all of our trainings on there. And if you do have any questions or concerns, you can always drop us a message on our Facebook. And then in terms of our YouTube channel, this is one of the webinars we've recorded on YouTube, but we do have a number of different short bite-sized videos as well on a range of different areas of communication. And we also have longer webinars just like this one. So please do check out the rest of our YouTube channel to see some of these videos. And then you can get more support via all these different organisations. So we've got Contact Ealing, Ealing SEND and Inclusion team, the Health Visitor team, Ealing Parenting Service, Ealing Local Offer, and Ealing Anchor Foundation. So please do get in touch directly with them. A lot of these services do run more support for parents, families and children. So please do check out their services via the link. We'll put them all in the description below. And then just wanted to share some useful websites and campaigns as well, if you want to learn more about autism and how best to support your autistic child or child with social communication differences. I also just want to highlight in particular the National Autistic Society website. There is quite a lot of information on the internet about autism, which unfortunately is not always true. So I would really recommend visiting the National Autistic Society website for factual and evidence-based information. And here are a few other useful websites and campaigns with lots of different activity ideas to support children's communication. Okay, so we have now come to the end of the webinar, and we have successfully covered what we had planned to cover, which was to help you know how to support your child's communication, and also to signpost you to the local services, to the workshops that we run to support your child with their sleeping, eating, sensory differences, toileting, and communication. So we have finished. And just a final parting message: every child has the capacity to enjoy learning, make progress, and be part of their community. So it's really important that we think about this and we think about how we can best support the children out there. And we couldn't keep running these workshops without you guys and without your amazing feedback. So please do just spend a few minutes completing feedback for us. We would very much appreciate it. We will put a link to the survey in the description. Only with your feedback we can continue to improve our services and continue to run these sorts of workshops and these webinars. So anything you have to say would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for joining our
Thank
webinar
you.
today, and we've hoped you found it beneficial. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.